Hi, I'm CJ Miller with Hoosier Ag Today, and welcome to the Your Community Podcast as Hoosier Ag Today presents Your Purdue Extension, a podcast network. And on today's show, we're going to be talking about coaching. And when you think about Purdue University and coaching, you often think about Gene Cady. Maybe you think about Matt Painter, two of the greatest basketball coaches of all time. But today we're going to not talk about basketball coaching. We're talking about community coaching and how that's having an impact on Indiana's 92 counties and rural communities. Our guest today on the Your Community Podcast is Tamara Ogle with Purdue Extension. We'll chat with her and do a deeper dive into community coaching coming up here in just a second here on the Your Community Podcast as Hoosier Ag Today presents Your Purdue Extension, a podcast network, which is brought to you by Indiana Farm Bureau, a unified voice for agriculture.
At Indiana Farm Bureau, we serve tree farmers, goat farmers, and in fact, all farmers. With over 250,000 members, Indiana Farm Bureau represents a broad range of farmers and puts power in your collective voice. You also get advice from our subject matter experts, more affordable health plan options, and support for youth programs statewide. So whether you grow soybeans or strawberries, membership means you'll be heard. Become a member today at infb.org.
And our guest on the Your Community Podcast today is Tamara Ogle with Purdue Extension, and she's based out of Tippecanoe County, West Lafayette. She works on the campus at Purdue University. First of all, Tamara, tell us your title and what you do for Purdue Extension and Purdue University.
Sure. Well, thank you so much for having me. My name is Tamara Ogle, and I'm a regional community development educator for Purdue Extension. I do a lot of different work on civic engagement as well as local government issues. And so I do some land use applied research and support for communities, as well as on the civic engagement side, facilitation, community coaching, helping communities make decisions or organizations make plans and decisions.
Tamara, I understand that Purdue Extension has a program called community coaching, and it's a relatively new discipline. And you're one of the team members behind the community coaching program through Purdue Extension. What exactly is community coaching, and how is it different from traditional consulting or other leadership training that you may find out there?
Yeah, so we kind of happened into community coaching when we first started in our roles, when the regional educator was a new role back in 2014. And we were named community coaches as part of an Okra, Purdue, Ball State, and IU program called Hometown Collaboration Initiative. And so each of the regional educators took a community, and we acted as a coach in that community to help them get through that Hometown Collaboration Initiative grant process. And so they were doing some learning, they were doing some surveying and public forums to understand what their community needed, and then making some decisions and creating and developing a project based on those needs. And so that community coach can be really important in those types of processes because they can help to guide the process so the community can focus on those decisions, on the content, on the deliberation. They also can build capacity. So there were times that we would help them figure out how to plan meetings, or we would build skills around facilitation so that they could go out and facilitate that public forum on their own. The community coach also empowers. And so we could empower those groups to make those decisions. We weren't making them for them. And so really what that project ended up being was an amalgamation of their community needs survey, what they learned from residents, as well as what they saw as needs through some of their work as a group. And then the last thing that community coaches can do is connect the group or the community to resources and expertise. And so that may be connecting communities to another community that's going through a similar issue. It might be connecting them to funding opportunities or resources from their local university.
Well, Tamara, you just touched upon this, and maybe you answered the question already, but I'm kind of curious, what are some of the biggest challenges that communities across Indiana, in particular rural communities, are facing today, and how are these coaching opportunities helping to meet some of those challenges or solve some of those challenges?
Yeah, I think each community is a little unique. When we went through that HCI process, we were really looking at kind of these larger buckets of leadership. So, how do we build leadership pipelines in rural areas to make sure that we have people running for office, have people taking over board positions, and are reaching a broader level, a broader number of people in leadership positions in our community. We also talked a lot about economy, and that's still something that comes up in communities today, whether it's housing issues and having affordable housing, or whether that is being able to find affordable daycare so that people can enter the workforce and stay in the workforce. For one of the communities in HCI, it was really supporting entrepreneurship and making sure that they were really working with their existing businesses to make sure they had everything they needed to stay in the community or expand. And then another aspect was placemaking. And so constantly, we're thinking about some of these land use issues. We're thinking about public spaces and parks, and how do we help to have places that we can gather and be in community with each other in rural communities. And so those were just three broader topics. I think there's a lot of other topics that communities, depending on their specific circumstances, are wrestling with. But I think that those three really come up for a lot of communities in different ways.
Chatting with Tamara Ogle here on the Your Community podcast. We're talking about community coaching and how it is having a positive impact on communities all across Indiana's 92 counties. And you touched upon the challenges, but you also touched upon how it's helping rural communities. And I'm kind of curious if you have an example of, off the top of your head, of an example where this particular program, the community coaching program, has gotten involved in a community and has helped to help meet those challenges specifically, and basically an example of a situation where a community has come out ahead because of the community coaching that Purdue Extension has provided.
Yeah, and sometimes it's whole communities or broader community groups. Sometimes it's groups within that community. So, one in particular, community coaching can be really effective as a new organization is trying to start up in a community or reinvigorate itself. Because sometimes our organizations may go through a period where people retire or move on to other things, and there's that lack of leadership, or maybe they didn't have a focus for a while and are finding a new issue they need to tackle. One coaching experience that I've had that I always kind of harken back to, it was one of my first, was helping a farmers market that had kind of lost their leadership. They'd lost their bylaws. They were struggling with some internal like conflict within the organization itself. Really helping them reinvigorate, write new bylaws, train some of their members for those leadership positions, and then really explore and look at some of the policies of farmers markets around them so that they could kind of adopt some of those policies to really meet the goals that they had for their farmers market. And I worked with them as a coach for about a year. Sometimes that was facilitating high conflict meetings and helping the group listen and speak with each other and find some shared agreement. Sometimes that was connecting them to other farmers markets and pulling their bylaws so we could take a look at some of the rules and policies that they had, see what things might work for that community. And other times it was building capacity in individual members. And so I had someone that ran for market master and had never run a meeting before. She never created an agenda. She had worked most of her life as a lunch lady and had been a vendor at the market for years. And so she had a lot of expertise, but she lacked that confidence of and maybe experience of running formal meetings. And so it was about sitting down and helping her create agendas and helping her script that meeting so she felt comfortable with it. And I think one of the cool things about community coaching is working yourself out of that job, right? Where community coaches aren't meant to stay with organizations or communities forever, but to help them build the capacity to do it on their own. And so I just remember watching it about her third meeting, her writing that agenda on herself, running just a really effective meeting, facilitating some conversation and disagreement, and just feeling that that sense of accomplishment in myself that I could help her realize those skills, but also knowing that that farmers market was ready to have a great season, had really worked hard to resolve some conflict, and had built trust within the organization itself over the past year.
The great thing, by the way, Tamara, about doing and hosting the Your Community podcast, and this is episode 11 that we've done here with Hoosier Ag today. The one thing that when I'm talking in talking with you and some of the other guests that we've had on the Your Community podcast, I see a similar thing or a similar theme rather. It's that a lot of communities they have individuals that have conversations, and it all starts with conversations where you know what we
Mhm.
need to have more green space. We need to put this together for our community. We need to do this to attract new business. We need this to attract more younger folks to our community, though that are in their 20s and 30s. We need to find a way to keep this brain drain from escaping our community. And it seems that so many folks they have those great intentions, but yet you mentioned the conflicts that sometimes get in the way. You mentioned that sometimes people don't know, okay, how do we get this started and off the ground? How do we facilitate this? How do we make this a better community? We want to, we just don't know how to get from A to B to C to D to F and E in between. How do we get to all these steps? And it sounds like Purdue Extension is really taking the reins and is helping so many great communities reach their fullest potential here, Tamara.
Yeah, and it is a role that we play as extension staff of coaching in communities. A lot of times it's through a grant process or a program. So I mentioned HCI is one of them. We also have our community vitality grants, the Downing Endowment, that will, I think, have some coaches attached to it or a coach like role to it. But we also recognize that there's others in our state that are doing community coaching or similar work in supporting health coalitions, in supporting different organizations. That it may be a community foundation member, it may be somebody at United Way in your local community, it may be somebody at a state agency. And so the other thing that I think is really exciting for me with Extension is also building those skills in those community development practitioners that are across Indiana to have some of those community coaching skills. And so this may not be a role that they have ever defined. They may be playing it without realizing it. But by, Tanya Hall and I lead this community coaching learning circle, and it's all about bringing people that are playing that role together to help them intentionally gain some skills and some knowledge around that role of community coaching so that they can go out and also serve as effective community coaches throughout the state.
Tamara, I'm glad you mentioned the Learning Circle program and the training that's taking place through Purdue Extension, because I understand that registration is going on right now for the next round of training sessions for Learning Circle and community coaching. What can you tell me about the training and who are some of the ideal participants that would make sense for this program?
Absolutely. Yeah. So registration is open. We run the Community Coaching Learning Circle every fall. It's a 12-week online course where there is some like homework between sessions that we do via our online course platform at Purdue. But we also have live Zoom sessions every Monday. So it actually runs from August 17th to October 26th this year. And we've taught this now, I think, for 4 or 5 years. And Hall and I created it, and we really based it off of everything that we wish we knew before we started coaching. And so it's really built for people that have been working with groups in their community or across other communities on projects. So they've got some experience with group dynamics, group processes, maybe running meetings and things like that. But maybe they're wanting to take that to the next level or explore this role of the community coach. And so we've got a lot of people that are from community foundations or United Ways, other nonprofits, sometimes state agencies, anyone that's working with groups to accomplish projects or build plans that oftentimes join this course. I will say that the course is national. And so we've had everybody from the East Coast to the Dakotas as part of that course, and it's pretty small. And one of the reasons that we do that and we keep it small is there's a lot of partner work, and there's also a lot of opportunities for networking. So what we find is that um, we all have different experiences dealing with different things in communities, and sometimes it's really great to learn from each other. And so even after the course, those cohorts that will have gone through together will oftentimes seek each other out when they need to bounce an idea off the wall, or they just need support in their role as a community coach.
Tamara, if someone is interested in signing up and registering for the Learning Circle training sessions, how's the best way to do that? How's the best way to get a hold of you and your team if they have any questions?
Absolutely. So you can find my email address as well as the registration link on our website, extension.purdue.edu/CDEXT. That's short for Community Development Extension. And it's under the events page, so you can look at it there, as well as some more information about the course itself. And then my email, as well as Tanya's, is there if you've got any questions.
And Tamara, I always ask this at the end of the interview. Is there anything else I've forgotten to ask or that you'd like to include as part of our conversation?
I don't think so, other than I would say that community coaching is really rewarding. It's kind of this all-encompassing experience to be able to work with a group closely and see them grow over time. Maybe not different than what Matt Painter experiences with his basketball teams, although a little bit different of a setting. And so for those that are working with groups and want to kind of explore that role and deepen their connection and ability to support groups, then I would suggest reaching out and joining us for the Community Coaching Learning Circle.
Once again, Tamara Ogle, she is with Purdue Extension, the Community Development Regional Extension Educator. And thank you so much, Tamara, for joining us here today on the Your Community Podcast. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
And thank you for watching and listening to the Your Community Podcast. If you're watching on YouTube, be sure to hit that like and subscribe button. And that way, every time we have a new Your Community Podcast or any new podcast or video to upload, you will be among the first to see it and check it out. A big thanks also to Indiana Farm Bureau, the sponsor of the Your Community Podcast, and Hoosier Ag Today presents Your Purdue Extension podcast network. Thanks to Indiana Farm Bureau, a unified voice for agriculture. I'm CJ Miller with Hoosier Ag Today.